It's an important question to ask. Why is it that so much modern classical music is so unpleasant or awful to listen to? Why is that? And for a lot of people who are not professional musicians, they're wondering if they should even ask the question because they don't know if it's okay to ask. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a very valid question, and you do not have to be a professional musician to understand if music is good or not. And how is it that our universities, with the music theory and music composition faculty, how is it that our music schools are failing our emerging composers? There's a lot of things to cover in this topic, but let me start off by asking, when was the last time you attended a top orchestra or top wind ensemble concert and you heard a new piece of music by a living composer that you actually liked? Now, this does happen occasionally, but I think if we're being honest, most of the time we leave feeling dissatisfied, confused, or just bored. Because a lot of the time, modern composers are not writing music that is of high quality. But keep in mind through this video that I am discussing the music at the highest levels. I mean the top orchestral and the top wind band music. The educational markets are totally different, so I'm not talking about that part of music. I'm talking about the classical music, which is supposed to be the cutting edge, the leading classical music, the most difficult to perform, that kind of music. Now, to answer this question, I will begin by talking about that academia, or the university setting. It's always been a very important space for emerging composers to explore new territory, to test the boundaries, and to just be free. It's very important for composers to have a space where they can do things that are not confined to the limits of the educational markets. Not every piece of music should be written as like a top 40 radio song or music that's in the educational markets. So it's always been really important that universities have that environment for emerging composers to flex their wings and just try new things, because that's how they learn. But the first thing to know is that university professors in the field of music theory and composition, most of them do not earn their living through selling copies of their sheet music. It's just a fact. They have a salary that comes from teaching in the university and the research that they do, but in general, they do not survive off of selling their music. And if the composers in the university setting had to survive off of the sales of their music, we would see a very different trend in classical music right now. And because professors do not have to make a living off of their music, there's no incentive for them to write music that the audience wants to hear. I mean, if you don't have to sell music to your customers, then why would you care if you had to write something pleasant that they would enjoy? There's no requirement there for these college professors to write music that their audience actually wants to hear, right? It makes sense. But there's a much deeper problem that is at the foundation of why concert music is so unpleasant these days. And it's been happening for decades. This has been happening for a while now. And that is, there's an emphasis on writing music that is highly complex. And it's almost not even that important in universities to be writing music that the audience wants to hear. It's far more respected by your university teachers if you write music that's intellectually interesting, or music that scholars want to study, or other composers want to look at. But because of this, it's not highly important to write accessible music for the audience. And this is a big mistake. And because of this belief that complexity is the most important thing in classical music, most college professors push onto their emerging students, the new composers. They push them into writing music that is highly complex. Composers are instead taught to write for other composers or for other scholars or for the university professors, because that's what gets them the most respect in the university environment. So in other words, a student composer might write something that's going to get 2 or 3 performances in 10 years, instead of having 25 performances and having something that sticks around for a long time. So, because of this emphasis on writing complex music, most college professors look down upon music that is not complex. Film music and popular music that you hear on the radio, that's not considered real music to many college professors. And yeah, that's a mistake, but that's the truth. That's how a lot of them view film music, video game music, and popular music. They just don't consider it as real music. In fact, most college professors do not even consider the music written in the educational markets to be real music. And that's just ridiculous because there's a lot of really high quality music that is being written and has been written in the educational markets. Take, for example, choral music. There's so much wonderful choral music that exists and is still being written today. And there's lots of great orchestral and band music in the educational markets. Now, I'll share with you a story about a composer that I met with who's very well established in the orchestral field. And I had a lesson with this composer many years ago. And we were discussing this similar topic of why is it that so much concert music loses the audience. And this composer told me, a lot of composers hide behind complexity because it's actually easier to write music that's overly complex and not make the music high quality. Complexity is one thing in music, but it does not equal quality. Now, on the other hand, is it true that there are some pieces of advanced classical music that if you do have a music background, you will enjoy and appreciate more? Yes, there are examples of that. And I think one very popular example is Bartók's music for strings, percussion, and celesta. That is a highly complex work. And I think especially composers who study music, they really grow to love that piece because they appreciate the complexity of it while also appreciating how accessible it is. And sometimes you need to hear a piece of music more than once. Maybe you have to listen to it 5 or 6 times to really begin to appreciate it. But just generally speaking, you can usually tell if a piece of music has something of quality just on the first listen. Maybe not every time, but generally speaking, you can. So, having said that, what should be the goal of composers when they write music? Well, I don't like to say for every person what they should or should not do with their writing, but generally speaking, the first thing is that you have to try to write music that your audience is going to enjoy and remember. Now, that might sound too obvious, but it's a lot more difficult than it sounds. It's actually a lot harder to write music that is accessible, that's high quality. But in my opinion, the other goal that composers should strive for is to not try to write music that sounds like everyone else, but to try to write music that only they could write. I think that is probably the best approach for most composers to try, and that's what I try to do. Now, I'm not saying that there should not be an academic space for composers to try complex music and to push the boundaries. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that simply writing music that is complex as the most important goal, that is not serving musicians and it's not serving the composer, it's not serving the audience. And another thing I want to point out is that I am not arguing that complex classical music is unpleasant to listen to. There have been many examples throughout history of highly complex music that is highly accessible. Take, for example, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. That's a highly complex work that is very difficult to perform. Take, for example, the Concerto for Orchestra by Bela Bartók. That's a very difficult and complex orchestral work, but it's very highly accessible and is considered one of the most important pieces of the 20th century. It's a wonderful piece of music. So an important lesson could be learned from Stravinsky and Bartók. Even though their music was highly complex, they never sacrificed accessibility to their audience. Now, I'm generally speaking about Stravinsky's early music that was accessible. His later music, well, that's a different story. But his early music, a lot of it was very accessible. So, if you're a non-musician, you might be wondering, is something wrong with me because I don't enjoy most of the newer music by living composers that I hear? Probably not. You do not have to be a professional musician to appreciate classical music that is complex. Again, look at the early Stravinsky music or Bela Bartók's music. That music's highly complex, and you can certainly enjoy it without being a professional musician. So, chances are if you hear music that you don't enjoy, it's probably not you that's the problem. Now, another thing I want to point out that a lot of people misunderstand is that they think just because music is simple that it was easy to write. Let's take, for example, Beethoven's Fifth. It's a very simple four-note motive that is developed in a lot of interesting ways, but at its foundation, it's just a simple four-note motive. One of the things you learn as a composer is that writing music that is reduced to the absolute necessary notes that you need, it can be a real challenge because it's very easy to write something that sounds too much like something else that already exists. It might sound too cliche, or it just might not sound very interesting. So it's not as easy as it looks to write a really simple motive or melody that is going to stick around. It's a lot easier for a composer to write something with a lot of complexity that doesn't really say anything. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to write something of high quality. So don't ever think that high quality and complexity are the same in music. It's not the case. A lot of music is highly complex, but the quality is just not there. And unfortunately, a lot of the leading and major publishers, music publishers that pretty much everyone is familiar with, many of them are putting out piles and piles of music that few people want to hear. They might sell a few copies to some libraries, but the general public and people that attend orchestra concerts or band concerts, most of them do not want to hear this music. So, where do I think this is all going in the future? Well, we don't really have an Igor Stravinsky or a Bartók of this current generation. Sure, there are some publishers trying to promote some of their composers as if they are on that level, but they're not. And really, the last major trend in classical music was the minimalism trend that happened many decades ago, but there's not really a clear direction of where classical music wants to go at the highest level. Well, it's no secret that a lot of orchestras have been struggling for a long time now, and in the future I think it's just going to become even more difficult because right now especially the world is entering an economic slowdown, and I think there's going to be less disposable income in the future to attend orchestral concerts. So unless these orchestras and bands really start programming music that audiences really want to hear, I think it's going to be even harder to get people to come and attend. And that's the reason why, especially in orchestra, that you see Beethoven and so many of these other composers performed over and over again, is because that's accessible music, but it will also draw in people. And unfortunately, it might even mean that there will be less opportunities for living composers in the future, because if the emphasis and importance is placed on just writing complex music, it's just not going to work. The universities need to place importance on writing for the audience, especially now. I'm not here to argue that everything needs to sound sweetly and pleasant. Not everything needs to sound like a Beethoven symphony. Take, for example, Bartók's music for strings, percussion, and celesta. even though the music does produce anxiety in a lot of people and it does sound a bit scary, it's still a highly accessible work. Because once again, Bartók usually did not lose sight of writing for his audience. But when your primary focus is to just write complex music at the expense of your audience, it's not serving the musicians because you're going to have less people showing up. It's not serving the audience because they're not going to enjoy it. And ultimately, it's not serving the composer because you're not going to make very much money off of your music. Which leads me to another question. Should composers try to make money off of their music? Yes, you should. In fact, that's how composers made a living in the past. It might sound ridiculous that I have to answer this question, but I will tell you it's actually looked down upon by many college professors if you have music that sells a lot of copies. They view it as selling out, or they view it as dumbing your music down to make money, which usually is not the case. The truth is, a lot of those college professors have not figured out a way to sell their music because the quality is just not there yet. And there is some resentment and jealousy from some of these people because they see other composers making money off of their music. There is nothing wrong with making money off of your music. You should never feel embarrassed about that. You should feel proud about it. If you are selling some copies of your music, it probably means that you figured out something that's not easy to figure out. It might mean that you figured out how to balance your own voice with the limits of instruments, that sort of thing. And this point just really bothers me because a lot of these college professors, they don't really know how to write music that audiences want to enjoy. So they don't sell very many copies of their music. So they try to make other composers that might sell a lot more copies of music, they try to make them look like they've sold out, or that they're just not writing real music because it sells. Well, if that's the case, they should look down upon composers like Igor Stravinsky, Bartók, Vaughan Williams, because they sold a lot of copies of their music. So I hope you now better understand some of the reasons why classical music is so difficult to listen to a lot of the times. But if you're feeling at all disappointed with the leading classical music that you hear, I encourage you to check out much of the educational markets. Check out that music because there's a lot of really wonderful music being written in those markets, such as high school orchestra, high school band, early college band, the choral field. There's so much wonderful choral music that's out there and that is still being written even right now. So definitely check out the educational markets. That's where the real high quality classical music is being written these days. And of course, there's lots of great music being written for film and games. That's a whole other huge area that you can explore. But don't feel discouraged because I do not think that what is happening now is going to be happening for the future. This video is sponsored by Ojaya Meditation. Taught out of the earthborn rainforest in Iowa, USA, Ojaya is vastly different from almost every other meditation method. There are so many benefits that I've received since practicing Ojaya, too many to list in fact. Every day after lunch, when I feel a little bit sluggish around 2 p.m., Ojaya meditation allows me to use that to rest deeper than sleep. Ojaya meditation allows me to take just 25 minutes out of my day to recharge like nothing else does. No amount of coffee or energy drink is ever going to replace the benefits that you will get from deep meditation. Ojaya is very simple and easy, yet it has to be learned very carefully. Using a very powerful, resonant mantra, Ojaya meditation gradually brings more and more health to your body and your spirit. In fact, I've noticed that composing music has become even easier since I've learned Ojaya meditation. And as one of my friends who just took this course said, he said it was the best investment in his health, period, that he's ever done. Take it from me, don't waste your time. I have tried so many meditation methods throughout the years, and Ojaya is the only one that I've stuck with. So go to ojaya.com today and sign up for your first 9 videos for free. I am composer Britt Andrew Burns. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon on the next video. Bye for now.